Hello everyone, my name is Michael and welcome to the 6th episode of this Reactjs tutorial series. In this video, we will go through handling events, so without further ado, let's get into the video. So let's go through this React documentation as I want to mention a few things. So first of all, as you'll see here, if you used plain JavaScript before, when you click a button and you want to run a function by clicking that button, you usually did onClick, all lowercase, and then inside a string you put it the function name and you run the function. On React there is a slight difference, so here you do onClick, but make sure the C here onClick is uppercase, and then inside of JavaScript we put the name of the function. So that's a key difference from React. That's mostly it from the documentation. Everything else I'll show you through the code. So let's minimize this window. And from the previous video, what we did, just to remind you, is we created a ticking clock. So let's remove that because we don't need it anymore. Great, now let's create a new component, and what we will do is create a counter. So every time you click a button, either minus or plus, it will either add or it will subtract. So let's create a new component. We will name it counter.js. Now I'll show you a quick trick that you can use. So if you do RFS and you install an extension I'll show you in a bit, if I click here, it will automatically create a function with the name of my JS file, and it saves you a lot of time. These are called the React snippets, and to be able to just type RFS, click enter, and generate this code right here, all you have to do is click on extension and type React snippets. But if you just put React, there we go. It should be the first one because it has the most downloads. Just download that. Another extension I really like is simple React snippets. It's the same thing, it just has more snippets. So here what I want to do is from props have an h1 that says counter, and then show the prop dot amount, right? Or let's name it counter. There we go. That's for the component. Now let's go back to app.js, and here let's import the component. So let's do import counter from counter. Actually, you have to take it from components, then counter. Great. Now let's put that inside the div. Perfect. Now let me run the app. So we will open terminal, new terminal, and run npm run start. And there we go. So it says the counter and it will display the number right here. So let me put that to the side and let's put a number here. So let's make it 30. And there we go. It says counter and 30. Now let's add two buttons. One, it will be the minus, so we can subtract from the total number, and one, it will be the plus. Actually, first let's create the state which will store our number. So let's create a new state, and to do that all we have to do is, okay, that's great. So we do const, we inside of array we put the value name, then the function which will change that value for that variable, and then use state, and here we mention the default state. And now let's put the count inside the counter prop, and let's open Google, and there we go, counter equals to 0. So let's create two buttons. This will be the plus, and let's have the minus right here. And I'm going to explain right now what this does. So let me do that. Great. So we have the minus here and the plus. And if I click the plus, as you'll see, it starts adding in the count state. As you'll see, it updates the state every time I click plus. Same for the minus, but it does what it's supposed to do. So minus, it subtracts 1 from the total counter, or plus, it adds 1 to the total counter. So let's see how we do that. So like I showed from the documentation, on click, we mentioned the function here, the function name. But you can also do an inline function. This is what this is called, because we have a function inline. And to run an inline function, all we do is we open parentheses, we create an arrow, and then we do what we would have to in the function. So what we do here is set count. We take the previous count and then we subtract 1, and on the plus what we do is we add 1, and that's basically it. And here we show the number. Now if you want to create a function, all you have to do is const plus equal, open parentheses, we put an arrow, inside brackets we put the set count plus 1, and let's copy this and create a minus and then use subtract. And now all we have to do is take this and put it inside of here. So we just put the name of the function, and same for the minus. Actually, minus goes here and plus goes here. Now if I open React, it should work the same. So let's refresh, and plus it does the same thing. So there are two options. Either you can use a function which you can put inside on click, or you can use an inline function, and that's basically it. Now let's go into forms. So let's create a very simple form. So let me delete that. So instead of div we will use a form, and inside of the form let's put an input, type text, and let's say enter your name. Let me see how that looks. Great. Now let's add a button, just a simple button which will say submit, and it has to be type submit. Make sure you do that, otherwise it will not work. And on the form what we will do is on submit. So instead of on click, here this function runs every time we click this button right here. So whenever we click the submit button which has type submit, this function will run. And here let's mention a function. We can call it on submit again, and let's create a function. So we'll do const on submit equal parentheses, an arrow, and then curly brackets. So let's go on the form, let's type my name, so we'll do Michael, and then let's click submit. So what happens is whenever I click submit, it refreshes the page basically, but actually it just redirects me to a new page with this question mark, and besides the question mark it will be the values, but it didn't show me anything because I have to add another value here called name. So let's put name because it's the same thing. And now if I try that again, click submit, as you'll see it redirects me to the same page, but it adds some extra information like the name, which is equal to Michael, but it refreshed the page, and we usually don't want to do that. Neither we want information displayed right here. This doesn't really help. So to prevent that, all we have to do is run event.prevent default. Now, how we can take the value from the input? Well, one way is to use the use state, and I'll show you that next, but the default way is to do this one right here. So what we'll do, event.target.elements.name.value. So basically here we put the name we have put inside of the name right here, so name. So if I put title, so here what I have to do is replace the name with title, whatever I have inside of the name. So let's try that. So let's resubmit, and there you go, we take Michael. Now let me create another input so we can verify it works. So here we will do last name, and let's have first underscore name and then last underscore name. So here let's take the last name, and we can also log the first name. Perfect. So let's do Michael and then Kitas, and let's click submit, and there you go, we take Michael and then we take Kitas. Basically another thing I showed you, so you can have in mind, when you do console.log, whatever you log, it will not display on the terminal, but instead it will display on the console on the website. So to view the console, I did it too fast, so we'll do inspect, right click, inspect, and then go to console, and there we go. So everything displayed on the console will be here and not in the terminal. So there we go. Now one way is to take the values like that, but another way is to use the use state. So let me do that. So we'll create a use state. So let's replace that, and we will name it first underscore name. So let's do it with a camel case. So first name and then set first name, and let's do it like that. And by default it will be equal to none, nothing. And then here let's do last name and then set last name. Okay, now let's go on the input and use an inline function. So we will do on change. So what basically the function on change does is every time we make a change on our input, this on change will run. So let me show you an example. So we'll do equal and we will run an inline function. So open parentheses, equal, and to take the value of our input, what we have to do is use the event, the default prop, and then we will do event dot target, and by target I mean the input, and from the input I want to take the value. So what that basically does is we take the event, which the event is on change, and then we go on the target, which is the input, and then we take the value. As you will see here, we don't have a value because we haven't defined a value, and we can do that by value equal to first name, but you don't have to do that. In our current situation, it's not required. So that's basically how you change the value. So let's use that on here as well. And we didn't use that before, but it still updated the input right here. That's because it's temporarily stored inside the input value, but it's not stored in a state. So we cannot really use that besides taking it from the event from our form. So now what we can do is whenever you submit, console.log first name and last name from the state right here. But we have to also update the state, and to do that, this is the value, and we will do set first name and we will update it with the value. And let's use the last name as well. So set last name, there we go. Now let's format it. Perfect. And to do that, just that, so what I did is right click, format document, and it formats my code to look prettier. So to do that, go to extensions, search for prettier, click the first one, which will have more than 17 million downloads, and click install, and it might ask you to refresh your Visual Studio Code. So what you have to do is close it and reopen it. And now what you can do is right click, format document with, and set prettier as your default formatter. And then every time you do format document or you do Shift Alt and F, it formats the document. So let's test it now. So let's go back, let's open console, and let's run Michael, then Kidas, then click submit. And there we go, it displays Michael Kidas from this onSubmit function. So we console.log those two values. So that's basically it for handling events. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hit that like button if you did. Also subscribe and hit that bell notification so you don't miss my next video on lists and keys. So yeah, see you in the next video.